was the other ban?
I did not see. I apologize.
Demon Hunter. There's the other class that should
Warlock.
be banned. Warlock,
Mage.
thank you. There we go. It was
All
Warlock.
right.
So it was those 4 decks banned on both sides. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to see Paladin, but it's also something not specifically about Paladin, but something I almost have come to expect to see from the Chinese region players is that they do their own thing, right? Like they bring lineups that are a little bit different. Even deck building specifically always looks a little bit different in general. So I'm excited to see if this Paladin can make it work, or if, as I've grown used to over the past, bit of Grandmasters, bit of Masters tours, are we just going to see Paladin fail once again on stream?
I love Monsanto with the jacket and the hat as well. It looks like almost a linen suit, like he should be strolling down the Venetian canals in his Panama hat as well. It's quite an ensemble.
Yeah, I feel like it's just one of those almost like superhero suit upgrades, right? When they're ready to fight like the big final boss, and then they're like, everything's just shinier, but it's still the same look. I think that's what it is. He's still got the hat, but then his attire neck down has gotten a lot shinier and more impressive. So looking forward to seeing if that progresses going forward. But yeah, Monsanto in the old signature hat. And looking at this matchup, as we start talking a little bit about Hearthstone, which I think we probably should do at some point. Druid versus Paladin. How are you feeling about it?
Well, it kind of runs into, for Paladin, the big problem with the class, as it's been since the inception of Hearthstone, which is interactivity, reactivity, something that Paladin really, really struggles with. It doesn't have good removal spells most of the time for cheap or expensive costs, like single target or big sweeping AoE spells. And therefore, these annoying minions that come down at the start of the game, like Peasant, Oracle of Elune, Razormane Battle Guard as well, Park Panther, they're very, very tough to kill, which means that if the Druid can get a lot of value out of them out of the gate, they're going to be in a very good position and can start to snowball the game. However, Monsanto doesn't have any of these repeat active effect minions that he can abuse the lack of removal from Paladin. And so therefore, if you're just going minion for minion, raw stats bumping up against each other, it becomes a lot closer. And once you hit turn 5, when the Aldor Truthseeker comes online, I think Simiao is in a very good spot.
Here though, so far, I do like the coin into 2-drop here from Monsanto. It is going to be, I'm not even going to say punish because it's an equal trade, but it's not going to be able to stick. But I think keeping hold of this 1-drop is very, very good because it can be a reactive removal tool, right, in its 3-1 form. And against Paladin, that lines up pretty well against some of the earlier minions. So I think the plan for Monsanto was to try and go like 2-2 and then use the Druid to actually just like remove a minion and defend the board that's already been built up. Or he can, of course, hold on to it and play it with the Oracle a little bit later on.
Yeah, now that the Oracle is in hand, this is where things do start getting spicy. In almost every other matchup, you can kind of just expect your Oracle to be cleared off instantly. Here, though, not necessarily the case. There might be a couple of tricks that Simiao has up his sleeve now that he has both Barov and the Broom. But to be honest, for Monsanto, if you see Barov and Broom used on this couple of pretty mediocre minions, I don't think you're that sad at all.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing that's going to happen here, or bigger payoff for Simiao, is that he will probably wait because he has Barov and Broom. He can let this board build up, right? He doesn't need to really answer it right now. Like, let Monsanto play all his minions out of his hand, fill the board, and then clear if he feels it's needed, especially going into that Arbor up potential turn. So I would like the hold there because Druid, outside of the odd circumstance, doesn't have damage from hand, right? So the damage out of nowhere is kind of predictable. So he can just, Simiao can just take it, like just let yourself get hit for 6 this turn, and then decide if you need to answer after the Oracle's been down for a while.
Whoa,
Monsanto,
a little bit spicier.
His eyes must have lit up there. I couldn't quite catch it in the shadow of the brim of his hat, but his eyes must have lit up because this pieces together when you work this out as a very, very strong setup. But we can see if he goes wide, the Bar of Broom just will come down.
And so how does he mitigate that? Again, this is what I was talking about, where if you can get repeat card draw off of your early peasant or get a big composting down at the start, you massively mitigate the effect of these big sweeping board clears. He currently, again, does not have any of those effects, though. He can go for a Neutron to get Divine Shield down, which helps, you know, it makes it a little bit harder to be able to clear with a big Barov. But more realistically for Monsanto, his game plan here should be close your eyes and pray they don't have it, because even if you have the refill of Greybow next turn, it's very rapidly approaching the point where it's just not quick enough. It's not strong enough when they're going to be going for Aldor Truthseeker, Librams of Wisdom, Librams of Hope, and then you just fall very quickly behind. And so I fully respect him, Monsanto, going relatively all in here, playing quite a lot of his hand, and setting up for just hopefully Arbor up to win the game next turn.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, if we were just freezing the game now and saying, okay, what was strictly the best play with full knowledge, there was some cool things he could do to try and dodge the Barov being super effective with Rush. But I am completely with you. This just wins the game if there isn't exactly an AoE clear, and he knows the Libram won't be doable, right? Yes, Libram can be played to bring everything down to 1 health. Most of it is anyway. But then there's no mana for the clear. I do wonder again if Samiao can be greedy and just play City Tax here and just hold the Broom and Barov once again. Because he's never taken enough damage, right?
Yeah, as long as he clears off at least 3 minions here, he's very, very happy to tank this damage on the following turn. And then, like you said, he can just go for waiting for the extra recommit once again, then clear afterwards. It's a good level-headed approach, not letting himself be overly threatened by what is a board that honestly doesn't do that much against him quite yet.
Well, there's some potential card draw. You could go for 1-drop. I think I like this, right? Go for resources. I think Monsanto knows he isn't exactly running away with this game right now. So just play for the resources. Even though it feels a little bit bad, a hero power is going to come down here. Not the end of the world. But I do like the 1-drop into composting here.
Agreed. If you go for Taunt, there's a very reasonable chance that your Oracle survives anyway, and then it's only a single Razormane Battle Guard away from going for the Oracle plus Battle Guard plus Greybow. Very, very powerful combo that allows you to get 2 Greybows, and at that point, even some big sweeping AoE can offer enough. Wow, so disciplined in his approach.
This is really nice play, honestly. The only thing that he has to be worried about, Samiao, I mean, is the potential lack of card draw from this point going forward. Because we know, or we have seen, obviously, that Monsanto still managed to keep hold of a solid amount of resources. That even if Samiao clears the board, if his only relevant card after that is 1 Libram of Hope and maybe, 1 additional minion, that might not be enough if Monsanto can keep these resources high in hand. Again, it's something that's easy to forget sometimes, but aggro Druid is like a deceptively long late game focused deck in some scenarios, right? It doesn't just throw cards on the board, burn out, and then end the game one way or the other. It can play for the late game.
Interesting old approach here by Monsanto. I was going to say that you could just start off with Arbor up, which gave you the perfect 9 damage on all your 1-attack minions to just be able to go bish bash bosh, take out the Aldor Truthseeker. Now, of course, he sacrificed an awful lot of potential damage on this turn by just bumping them at the start, but it did give him some very, very powerful draws, to be fair. As I said, that Battle Guard, and already just being able to copy these mules is setting up for still a very powerful Arbor up on the following turn.
Slight DC. Just translated that. It's just a disconnect.
Your Chinese is coming along nicely.
Mm-hmm. still won't be as good as yours, of course, as the one out of the two of us who's actually learning it. Varian now shores up the worry I had earlier about Samiao's general plans for the game going forward, so that is a really good pickup for him. And wow, this game is still closer than I thought it would be, one way or the other, right? Obviously, Monsanto did have that big setup for turn 5, didn't get it, but Samiao's just been able to just sit on this Barov.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And once he hit that Aldor Truthseeker, this is what I was talking about. If you just go stat for stat, even if you're literally doubling up on all of the minions you're playing because of the Oracle of Elune, it's still just not good enough. Most of your minions have more health than attack, and that trades so poorly into these big taunts. You want to be playing multiple Druid of the Reefs for rush, not for taunt here,
right?
Just because of the amount of clearing potential that affords you. Quite clearly here for Monsanto, I think we are saving up for that big play I keep talking about of the Oracle, Battle Guard, plus one of the big 5-drop taunts. It will very possibly be Teacher's Pet instead of the Greybow, just because that's a little more resilient to a one-board super clear, because if everything's cleared at the same time, obviously you don't get the effect of Greybow. And therefore, it makes sense on this turn to just cash in the immediate attack off of Arbor, because as we can see, it's probably not going to win him the game on the turn he plays it, so you just use it for some clearing potential.
This is looking good again from Monsanto. Oh! Okay. Do you think this is the turn where Barrow of Broom gets played because of the refill potential? Because I think he probably can't ignore this, right? I don't think Varian alone feels good enough.
Okay, obviously finding yourself or 2 chances, at finding Devout Pupil would be a very nice outcome to get, as I believe, yes, it is playable for 0 mana on this turn as well, which is just such a swing. When you couple that with the Samuro to go with potential buff next turn if they go wide. If they don't go wide, you can just go for McGurgle Prime, which should get the job done on its own.
Yeah, that was a really good response there from Samiao, actually, with the 4-5 taunt as an additional factor. This could just be time for Greybow to hit the board, honestly. It doesn't quite line up with anything too great in Monsanto's hand, but there are enough minions on board to make it relevant, at least.
Yeah, as you can see, he's still holding on to those combat pieces, just going wide as possible, trying to get some attack power to chunk back against these big chunky taunts. Oh, but look at these numbers. They're so awkward. You can go Park Panther into the 9-4, but then, of course, you can't use just your hero power to cleanly clear off the Divine Shield. If you use hero power to take off the Divine Shield and then sack one of the treants into Varian, I guess you can leave the 4-5 on board for a turn.
Yeah, I think it's just the one trade, right?
Yeah.
This does look okay. I think he did play the Peasant as well, just to try and get the extra card draw, but there is a lot of AoE now.
A lot of AoE, and you can develop as much stats as you want alongside that. Like, obviously, I do think it's Samuro plus the double buff on this turn, but honestly, you could just go McGurgle Rush and probably still win the game.
I was looking at McGurgle Rush just because it doesn't give Monsanto a chance to build a board into your McGurgle again, right? So it just does that now. But I guess this just definitely clears the board, keeps a reasonable amount of board as well, and also just forces Monsanto to have something as opposed to just try and make something work with McGurgle right now. So I do like it overall, and I think just generally I've really liked the way Samiao has approached this. Just holding on to those key resources for so long is pretty impressive.
It's been incredibly disciplined. I absolutely agree. It was very easy to get flustered at the start of this game and just throw down your AoE right at the start, but he took it very slowly, very sensibly, and the crucial early game decisions allowed him to play this very powerful and honestly very easy late game where he's just playing his biggest thing each turn, and that's going to win him the game.
Okay, is there anything Monsanto can pick up here, do you think? He's got, I think... Oh, there's still the rush, actually, from Carriol. Oh, that's brutal. He can just play Broom after this. Never mind. For some reason, I thought Carriol had already attacked.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. This is way... Never mind. This is way worse for Monsanto than I thought it was.
I don't even know if you're supposed to here, right? Like, I guess the Broom is just... If everything else goes wrong, that gives you a guaranteed activator for Barov, whereas you otherwise didn't necessarily have that. As we can see, it just does not matter. Monsanto throws it down, didn't find the Battle Guard once over the entire course of the game, and Paladin, who'd have thought it, Raven, is the first deck to win in this last hero standing series, and looking unstoppable. That was super powerful.
I would not have thought it, I can confirm. And what's most impressive here, yes, of course, he had this turn with the Blade Master, but it's not often you play against aggro Druid with a decent opening as well. It's not like Monsanto had a bad open. And start the game more or less with Bar of Broom, and also end the game with Bar of Broom in hand, and you just won pretty convincingly. So really well played from Saimiao. That means that he's going to take Team China to a 1-0 lead in his first best of 5, and it also means, because this is last hero standing, that he's going to be playing Paladin again, and this is maybe where things start to look a little bit weaker. But as we found out a little bit earlier on, of course, based on how the matches went earlier, you really do in last hero standing only really need to win that one game with a class, especially if it's game number 1, because the natural counterpick fights that happen, which are even more common in this format because the players have 6 decks to choose from, not like the normal 3. It does mean that these counterpicks are way more flexible generally, and normally because of that more effective.
And despite sitting here for an entire season of GM and multiple Masters Tours saying that Paladin is the worst deck in Hearthstone history, I hate it and it always loses, I'm looking through these lists and trying to find a hard counter, and I feel like I'm coming up a little bit short. Like, the aggro decks, I think, are reasonable. They're pretty good. Like, Hunter I would call a slight favorite. But, for America, sorry, it's Quest Hunter anyway, rather than Face Hunter. I was looking at the Chinese players list, which massively shakes things up. Maybe that's good enough to go for, but even then I would say that the healing that Paladin has access to is going to be able to offset the aggression that you have from all your spells, and then their big minions might be able to close it out at the end. And so then if you don't have that, you can go for, I don't know, Paladin Mirror, like a Control Warrior. That doesn't sound especially great. Quest Shaman, maybe? But even then, the rush that is afforded to them with all their big minions in the late game thanks to Broom, I think is very often overwhelming and difficult for Shaman to fight back against.
I do think it's a very strange meta plus format we've landed in here, because, well, what's Paladin weak to? Oh, the combo decks. You can ban them all. So it's worked out in that way, right? We have, less of a combo deck, but Warlock banned out. But then when you look at, for example, Mage, Demon Hunter, and Rogue, I would generally like to play those classes against Paladin, but the players can't because they are the ones that are banned out. So we sort of saw this, especially earlier on, say, from that Priest deck from the European team, where just having these sort of weird decks that you've kind of just removed the general weaknesses from might well become clutch in the way this tournament pans out. So we might actually see, even though it's just maybe one deck that looks a little bit different, in LHS, that one deck can make a huge difference. So we'll see if it pays off for any of these teams specifically, or if just the good old-fashioned stuff gets the job done. We are just waiting on to see which player's going to be jumping in, if it's going to change, and also what decks they're playing. But just looking at this, like you said, the Americas have that Control Warrior again, doesn't seem too great. There are some other options, and there's also just the option of saying, you know what, it didn't work then, but do we just throw another aggro deck at it? And you know what, I will chuck in this Quest Hunter as an aggro deck, your plan is still roughly the same. It just looks a little bit different. So they might just go for that because, yet again, maybe this is just my own way of looking at it, but I don't think playing a Paladin mirror is really a great answer. Because if you lose that, and then Paladin gets to just go again into something you've already struggled with picking an answer to, and not only does it just seem unlikely you'll win the series, but also must be a bit of a blow to the confidence overall.
Very true. And the Quest Hunter, I think, is a very interesting proposition against this Paladin, because in the early game, I think it's most likely, that the Hunter will be able to very easily deal with everything the Paladin plays. Like, it's the point of the early game of their deck, is they just have many, many removal spells to clear everything off. Where things get a little bit more interesting is the mid to late game, I believe, because obviously there's the heal available to Paladin, which can offset a little bit of that damage, slow you down as the Hunter, but those big minions are kind of awkward for you, right? You do have Professor Slate, you do have poison as well in the form of Venomous Scorpid, but if they play an 8/8 Divine Shield, that's quite difficult to clear. You're going to need to use a hero power plus a poison effect, maybe freeze it with Rinling's Rifle, but maybe with the consistency of card draw in the deck, you can get that done. I don't know. We'll have to see as it plays out. Because like you said, I do not want to queue a Paladin mirror into this one for the Americas region, and I would honestly rather the Hunter if you're going down that route.
Okay, and it does look like it's going to be Nate on the Shaman, actually, the Quest Shaman, so we'll have to see if this pays off. And it's a tough one, isn't it? Because, again, we generally view the Shaman as an anti-aggro deck. Sometimes Paladin acts like an aggro deck. Sometimes it's more of almost a control deck with, like, late-game big minion finishers, both of which Shaman are able to deal with. But the big worry is if they do the one you aren't currently prepared for, if that makes sense. It can be a little bit difficult. So I guess if you're not going to go for that Paladin mirror, you're not confident on the aggro, that going for this is probably the next best thing, right? To just try and sort of almost out-control the game. It's doubtful that you're going to be able to aggro them down with Shaman, but just having access to just a potential lot of removal for various generation effects, and also ways to negate the Librams themselves, whether that's Revolve, Hex, or anything like Devolving Missiles, anything like that, right? To try and just negate some of the general power of Paladin.
And I gotta say, again, as well, that I know there have been differences in opinions on Quest Shaman, and I've kind of fallen in and out of love with the deck as it's come in and out of popularity in different metagames. Right now, I just love this deck, regardless of how good it may or may not be. I just think it's fun to play. The multicaster alone, I think, opens up so much more of an aggressive play style, because you get so much more of your burn over the course of the game, and using that in combination with Overdraft, I think allows you to just burst down huge boards, deal 1 million damage to your opponent, and you don't have to mess around with just outvaluing your opponent. You can just blast them in the face for a whole bunch of damage instead, which can be very useful against the Paladin. If they do find a Libram of Hope, generally it shuts down the aggro game plan, and you have to transition over to huge charge calls, any other generated spells to get big boards in the late game. But if you can get off to a rip-roaring aggressive start, that burn damage can just lock you the game out of nowhere.
Yeah, and even with the heals, if we're just talking about, say, Libram of Hope, even if it's reduced a little bit, it's a significant portion of any given Paladin turn, and it is only healing for 8, right? It's not like it heals for 20 or anything like that, so 8 is very doable from Shaman as well in terms of just burst, whether it's minion or spell damage, so we will have to see how it pans out. But again, I'm just... Even though I'm excited to cast the game, I'm already excited for what the potential counterpicks to these could be, right? On one hand, this is the response to the Paladin. If this fails, it'll be like one of the first times we've seen it today, where the counterpick doesn't really work. And if it doesn't fail, then what's the answer to Shaman in a lineup that mostly has aggro decks?
That will get a little bit trickier. I think the Hunter, this Quest Hunter, is going to be in a lot better shape than aggro face Hunter would be, but you do raise a great point that outside of that, like, I don't think the Control Warrior is going to be able to get there. Maybe you just have to take a mirror at that point, although of course that Paladin that we haven't seen explored too much in the first couple series of the day could come into effect and try to straighten this one out for the Americas players. But first of all, of course, Nyara still has the opportunity, still has the chances, to win on the Shaman, a matchup that I am Like I said, I think it's a close one, but I am still favoring the Shaman for overall, especially with a gorgeous starting hand like that one.
Yeah, I do see a parrot though, Derek, and
Oh yeah.
it's a good card. No spells yet to really plan anything around it too soon, but still a pretty solid 4-drop, especially even if this Samuro is decided to be kept by Samuro, which I would imagine it's not. Still not a card you generally want to play on curve.
I'm pretty surprised to see Nyara mulling away Lightning Bloom. I know her hand is kind of low on value if she does hold on to that, and she doesn't have the parrots as well, which can help. Or sorry, brilliant macaws as the
Macaw's still a parrot. I'll give it you.
It's a type of parrot. They're a group of parrots basically. Yeah. It's a little bit lower in value, but I do still think, in my opinion, Lightning Bloom is just an auto keep in pretty much every matchup. It just offers you so much tempo, so much quest progression that I can't realistically see throwing it away.
Going for hero power, not really trusting playing the note taker on 2 because of course there is Hand of Adar that can kind of punish that, and unlike the last game, Hand of Adar would be a punish for that card because the trade would be a shared benefit for Saimiao, right? Because you'd be effectively removing the spellburst effect.
Pretty standard start to the game, all things considered. Ney, I think, will probably end up on the Serpent Shrine portal here, just to clear off the minions, stop any further buffs. I know it's overkill to an extent, but what else are you really targeting?
Win the board.
Exactly. Pretty big 50-50 here. I can't remember the name of the card, but half the time it increases the cost of a card in your hand, half the time it decreases the cost of a card in your hand. And Nyara got the bad one. Bad Ogre.
Yeah, maybe it'll do better next turn and decrease it back down to 4.
Easy come, easy go.
There is coin carryall here for Saimiao, and a reasonable reduction in hand, right? With that Hand of Adar especially.
Just let the Ogre sit there. She's not going to be able to play a single card. Why would you remove it?
I'd love it, yeah. Imagine if it told your opponent if it's increased or decreased. You'd be like, oh, you can stay. Could well be Note Taker Lightning Bolt here, just to have the flexibility of that second Lightning Bolt going forward, because I think it's fair to say Ney must feel under pressure right now that Saimiao keeps winning the board and Ney's not really got anything that can help sort of stick a board. Yes, there's the Canal Slogger that's 1 mana more expensive anyway, but also that often doesn't really win board by itself. It normally just has a good trade, right?
I do like this decision for Ney to not go for the Note Taker alongside it. I just think with this hand, Note Taker guidance is too important.
Okay.
She needs that extra value to be able to keep churning through her quest, because the rest of her hand isn't really getting there. Situations like this are, again, kind of why I like keeping Lightning Bloom, just because it allows you to pull off these quicker tempo plays that, in the end, often generate you more value anyway, because you're able to go for, your more powerful value card, with the Note Taker as well. But that's besides the point, as she will still be able to go for double guidance next turn quite happily.
Now, choices between Libram of Wisdom or a tax trade. Here for Saimiao. It does look like he's going to take the cycle here, draw an additional card, not make that 1/1 a 2/2, which could then peel off the totem. But again, I think I generally agree that an extra card in hand for the mana is probably more important than killing a totem easily.
I agree too.
Oh, not too bad.
Yeah, you're taking an overdraft very, very happily. Unlocking the mana crystals on this turn means that she now has 2 mana to work with on this turn. Probably not playing the Novice Zapper quite yet. I think you're looking to get a little bit more value out of that with your generated spells.
Oh, wow. These are really good. The Vivid Spores from the first one is good versus the AoE, of course. And then the Revolve is good for those the minions with Librams on, or just the awkward minions you want to be able to punch through.
That's not a bad point. I kind of instinctively go yuck at Revolve because most of the time it's just, even when you think it's good, it's like, it's okay, but is it a lightning blow? Is it a lightning bloom or whatever?
I think really specifically against Paladin, I give it a little bit more respect.
No, you're absolutely right. And here, Sign Me Out enters the everyone's favorite portion of Paladin, the stop thinking part, where you just play your biggest minion and hope that it's good enough to get there.
Yeah, and with the help of the Aldor Attendant as well, it does mean that Libram of Hope is playable next turn, effectively on curve. And I think there is no reason not to, or a few reasons. There are some reasons, obviously, depending on what Nay's turn looks like, but I think more to my point, playing it as a tempo option seems very good for Sign Me Out at this point in the game.
So Nay has played one Overload card towards her second level of quest progression. So it could be 0 mana Novice Zapper plus the Canal Slogger in order to get a 3/3 on the board as well, which would also allow her to take a value trade with the 2/3 into the Knight of Anointment, which just seems like a very clean turn.
Yeah, I'm trying to argue with you, but I can't. It just looks good, doesn't it?
I guess you could slot in the Overdraft along the way, right, in order to be able to go for unlock the 2 crystals and then play the Canal Slogger as well. But instead, she's deviating completely from what I thought was the expected line on this turn and just goes with the Revolve right out of the gate and plays out, instead of the Canal Slogger, obviously the Steward of Scrolls.
Yeah, and although I do agree, I think your turn was very good, I can understand this because I think it's fair to say we have gone past the point of either of these players really aggroing anyone down, right? I think that game plan is slightly slipped away now for both players. So if you're going to go long, Nay's taking the choice to, what was that, just one Libram of Wisdom played? And then she's revolved it away, which means that Libram of Wisdom count is 1 right now, and there's 1 more in the deck somewhere. So I think that's actually not a bad play if Nay's already just comfortable with just saying, right, we're going to play late game. I'm going to get to the quest completion. I'm going to outvalue you with the sheer power of double spells.
That's fair. I was kind of thinking that it's, I don't know, just leaves her with a lot less on board because she doesn't get the 3/3 immediately. She doesn't get the value trade either. But who knows? Maybe repeat Librams of Wisdom and potentially even a 0 mana Devout Pupil as well could have swung the board way back in Sign Me Out's favor. And so for Naysil, the decisions have been made and it's time to move on with clearing this board. It looks to me like that's coming in the form of Overload into Overdraft on this turn. I wasn't quite sure if that was Novice Zapper plus Lightning Storm into Overdraft or this Rushing Totems into Overdraft, which is pretty reasonable too.
Just tough though, because this doesn't do the full job. There's still just a 5/6 on board, which is a little bit scary. That Homunculus is going to pop out too at some point. Oh, sorry. Right now, I apologize. I thought it was the turn before. So, still a little bit scary. And again, the resources Nay has access to are not exactly fantastic right now. Quite defensive, at least for now. But that's Parrot number 1.
Is that Squawker going to summon a Libram of Hope were it to be played on this?
So he did not target himself, right? He was already on 30.
Yeah, I think he targeted his minion.
Yeah. Squawk, squawk.
Oh, that's so strong. How is that bird legal?
It's not. You need some kind of permit.
You got a parrot permit, mate.
To be fair, things that actually do exist.
I'm sure they do. I shan't question you on it.
Here, though, that is some value with Note Taker, of course, but does value matter right now? Does Note Taker have to be used with, like, Lightning Storm or something just to not get punched? Because it looks very dangerous on Sign Me Out's side of the board right now.
So if you play Novice Zapper, I believe you proc the quest and the charged call will go up to a 7 mana minion. You ideally want that to be up to 8, I think, on this turn if you were going to play it at all. It looks like in the end Nayara is just going to go for the double Lightning Storm. This is kind of the problem that I had with her play of going for the summoning totems and then playing the Overdraft, is that when you inevitably go for a much bigger overload turn, you're left without the Overdraft to deal that extra damage and unlock those crystals. It was a very middle-of-the-road Overdraft she went for, rather than trying to greed it out that little bit further, which I did think was very, very tempting. However, this is now most of the board cleared. 8 mana minion available to be summoned next turn, I believe, off of the charged call as well. Potentially even 9 if she wants to go for a runway Blackwing as well. But the point is, most of this board is cleared, and she can follow up with some powerful plays of her own too.
Yeah, here comes Broom. The 2/1/1's going to clear this up. I'm a little bit surprised Samiao hasn't decided to shuffle City Techs yet. I felt like that was always happening this turn. If this was going to be the play, right? If you planned on using the weapon and the 1/1 to trade, I feel like the City Tech shuffle always happens. But I guess he's just keeping hold of that with Barov for a worst case scenario. But I just wondered if you can sort of just race the worst case scenario. There's only 5 mana for Nay this turn. If he just gained an additional card, maybe he gets to play an additional bigger minion and set up, an almost unstoppable lethal potential.
It is close, isn't it? Because he takes what is probably a slightly weaker turn this turn by not trading it and seeing what he gets off the top. But he's saying I can just draw a natural card from my deck. If it's Varian or another Libram of Hope, I'm just going to slam it down. If it's not, then he can trade and very likely still play whatever he gets anyway.
It's still Libram of Hope, right? It is. Oh. I thought so. I told you, the parrots, they just get there.
It's disgusting.
And you can see now, like, one of the questions people ask sometimes is, is the parrot good in Libram Paladin? Don't you have to play, like, the aggro version with Blessing of Authority? And yes, it's powerful in that deck, but you can see, you can easily set this up to really benefit you, because just as much as Samiao could have just gained a Libram instead if he'd drawn one, you can kind of set this up and not really need +1/+1 at a chance at a parrot making an 8/8 Divine Shield taunt. So there are options here, and even if it was a Libram, I think Samiao would still be okay with it because he would have gained the Libram back that he would have lost.
I can't quite remember the positioning of these minions, but I think that the Rabbit is going to have a little bit of a tough time with these minions. Double Rabbit, I think, means that everything except the Libram of Hope can be cleared off, because the first Rabbit will attack into the Divine Shield in the middle, and then the Conveyor Belt shuffles the outer 2 minions to the middle, and then you, of course, kill off everything except the 8/8. But then you have no threats left on the board whatsoever, and so maybe it's better to take a big 10/10 in addition to the Rabbit.
Yeah, cleared most of it off, of course. The Brakan is down, so that's important, just being able to at least challenge most of the 8/8. But again, Samiao must just be best mates with Varian, because he turns up on time. Honestly, that's 2 games here that Heroi's got Varian exactly when he needed some additional resources. It's huge.
Varian's just the perfect party guest. He turns up right on time. He's got 2 swords in hand. He's ready for a good time. Ah. Okay, so Rush-in obviously has already gotten the effect off of Varian. And by using this Broom here, it does mean that he gets more damage through, but then of course it also means that Barov does not have an immediate activator. I guess relying on the effect of Barov plus the Samuro instead to be able to get there. But it's going to have to get through an awful lot here, because for Nay, she can go for both double effect of the charge call and the Vivid Spores as well. But she gets no taunts after 4 options. She's offered 0 Scrap Golems, and that is not how you're going to win this game. She needed the Scrap Golem to have any chance.
Yeah. This one's a rough one. I imagine it just has to be the Null, right?
Null, give it double death rattle so you can then deal 15 damage? Okay. I mean, obviously, apologies, she does not have to go for the play of the Vivid Spores if she doesn't think that's going to get there.
Yeah, it does have Taunt as an option with those wolves. You can see it wouldn't pay off, of course, because we know what's in the hand for Saimiao. Nice little play, honestly, with the removal there to help out with that. Gets to retain one of the nulls. Is representing a ton of damage, but Saimiao is still on 28 health. So although it's a lot of damage here for Ney, she'd still need a little bit extra to, you know, actually one-shot Saimiao and finish the game.
And this one is just getting so close, isn't it? Barov, all of a sudden, one of the best cards he could have available to one of the weirdly worst cards he could have available, because you're literally just going to double the amount of attack in play with summoning double Deathwing for your opponent on its death rattle. And so more realistically, your game plan is put an annoying taunt in the way so that they can't clear off your other minions, and then use the rest of your hand to push in for that crucial 3 remaining damage to close out the game after the swing.
Do you like the Samuro here as well, to like Samuro down the null? So then there's only the Deathwing swing?
I think so, right? A Divine Shield Taunt is really, really annoying. And yes, it means that both your minions, as it currently stands, have to survive. But if you're not going for that, you're going for...
It'll be the Aldor and the Devout Pupil, right?
Yeah, 2+5. It doesn't feel quite so clean to me. Oh, that's a nice top deck.
Yeah, benefit of this play from Saimiao is this is as wide as he could possibly go, right? Which I think is also valid, to actually just say, well, I've got 1 damage from weapon. If, like, some of these minions get to attack and I draw a buff that I'm likely to just auto-win. Wind Fury, hang on.
Yeah, that Wind Fury is very spicy, isn't it? Is there lethal available on this?
So Storm Strike kills the taunt, but then it's only 24 for Wind Fury. Because she would have to trade the null as well.
So you go null, 6 damage with the Storm Strike, right? Because it double activates, and then Wind Fury. Right?
Oh, wait. Yeah, the double act. I just forgot
the
about
double
Brakan.
Activation. It deals 6. Yeah.
I'm an idiot. And that's 5 mana. That seems to make sense to me.
No, come on, it's lethal. Oh, no, nay. Oh, okay.
And there's... It's not okay, right? Because there's Barov and Samuro.
You're correct. It's not okay.
It's not okay.
That's Miss Lethal in the end of the game.
Oh, Saimiao got away with that one. And it's a big one to get away with, right? Like 2 wins on Paladin, 2 wins in LHS when there's actually 6 decks to choose from to counterpick. This is a nightmare. This might just be the one extra step that makes China be able to take at least the first best of 5.
It cannot be overstated how big of a deal that is for Saimiao to get 2 wins with Paladin of all decks out of the gate, and the Shaman falling by the wayside, given this is once again last hero standing. That one stings. That one really, really stings, and is a big blow to the Americas region overall, despite being up 2 points to 0 here against China. Every point matters, because once again, just in case there's any confusion, it's not about quote-unquote beating your opponent in terms of points. It's just about accruing as many points as possible before the end of the round-robin phase. So even if you end up, 1-5, that's still better than 0-6 in terms of the total points available,
right?
Because you still get a point, which goes towards your total accumulation of points at the end of the 3 days of round-robin.
And that's the thing as well, just to sort of continue your point, I guess, or more likely just repeat your point. But for example, the 1 point you could get, even if you lose all of the points in a matchup of, say, region versus region, well, each region plays all of the other regions, right? So you might do really well in the other 2 and be 1 point short of getting, for example, second or first place in those standings. So you are completely right that every single possible victory sort of point is extremely important to these players and these teams overall. But that is a huge one. Is Saimiao going to 3-0 with Paladin, Derek? Because that would be after today, I don't know if my heart could take it. That would be unexpected to say the least.
It is kind of looking that way, isn't it? We've seen the Shaman and the Druid both fall to the Paladin now. Obviously, with Warlock, Rogue, Mage, and Demon Hunter banned, that leaves Warrior, the Mirror, Shadow Priest, and Face Hunter. Quest Hunter, as opposed to the Face Hunter available to the Americas region. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure exactly which way I'd like to go. My inclination, my spidey senses are telling me that probably the Hunter is the way to go, because like I said, you have a lot of burn damage. If you're able to get down an early Tavish, then the healing becomes often not quite enough to be able to withstand all your damage. Having said that, though, there are, of course, a lot of big taunts, a lot of healing, which can get in the way of a Quest Hunter, in which case, maybe just closing your eyes and jamming Shadow Priest for 3 games is the best shot you've got.
Yeah, you were making me very proud up until you switched away from the Hunter discussion.
I still think Hunter.
I think I'd go Hunter as well, honestly, and all sort of memes aside. I do think it's just also just potentially the best chance at grabbing 2 games, right? Because that's also what needs to happen. It's not about just beating Paladin. It's about having to basically reverse sweep at this point. So this needs to be done, and I think Hunter's because it's such a strange aggro deck in itself. It's just a mostly from hand burn deck with some nice sort of tech involved. I think that it's the one most likely to kind of steal weird wins, as opposed to, okay, let's just pretend Shadow Priest gets queued. They win. Well, okay, but they've got loads of potential answers to that Shadow Priest, and they only have to grab one of them to be able to work. So I think this Quest Hunter, because not a lot of players appear to really be even considering it as a threat, and might be the best sort of long shot that the Americas have. So we'll have to see what they pick, see if they agree with us, or more than likely disagree and play something else, probably more reasonable in the long run. So let's find out. Of course, Samiao is going to be on this Paladin, and I will say, these Varian timings are perfect. It's like, oh, the hand's looking a bit... Oh, never mind. Varian there with 8 mana to play. Perfect. Refill the hand. Yeah, this is looking quite good. Samiao could do with doing that with just one more time, and that would be a very nice win for his team to already grab 1 point for Team China so far. But it looks like Nalgadan, the final player on the team for Americas in Constructed, is going to decide to play that mirror match.
And
although not strictly a mirror, of course, but close enough.
Yes, not a strict mirror, as you say. A very appropriate final boss in Nalgadan, who is an absolute unit at the best of times, and with those cool robot glasses or whatever they are that he's got in his picture as well, he adds a little bit of a extra spice to the final boss element. But either way, as you say, not a complete mirror. The main omission for Nalgadan on the Americas side is, of course, those Squawkers, the Sunwing Squawkers that were so powerful for Samiao over the course of that game. Instead, they've got Underlight Angling Rod, which is the obviously 3 mana 3/2 weapon that whenever you swing adds a Murloc to your hand. It's a decent card. It's not bad, make no mistake. But honestly, I'm pretty surprised
it's not
to see
a parrot,
that slotted in instead of the parrot. Yeah, like that was a 4 mana Libram of Wisdom plus a 3/4 as Libram of Hope, sorry, plus a 3/4. Like it was just bonkers power level.
Yeah, let's be honest. What would you rather have, a rickety-looking fishing rod or a parrot? It's just cooler. One can talk
and summon down angelic beings from the sky that slap your opponent in the face. It's
imagine going to like a pet shop and be like, so does this parrot do anything? Well, yeah, it can repeat a few phrases. All right, okay, that's cool. Also, it can summon angelic angel demon things. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see how it pays off. We can already see a parrot in Samiao's opening here. And Nalgadan doesn't have a too bad starter as well. And I was going to ask whether you'd ever consider keeping Varian just to have that sort of guaranteed resource, or is it just too slow as an 8-drop?
I think it's a little too slow. You have to trust your deck to a certain extent, as in my opinion, what the Paladin deck has suffered from is not lack of late game in the games where it's gone poorly. it's lack of early game. Because if you look through the list, like there's one proactive 4-drop because Samuro doesn't really count. There's only 2 real proactive 4-drops in the Bannermen because Barov doesn't really count. There's very few proactive 2-drops as well in the McGurgle Prime because all the rest are buff effects. Like, it's very specific, the cards you need to hit to have a curve of 1 through 5 before your late game effects start coming in. So I fully agree for Nalgadan that you just keep everything that costs 2, 3 or less and is actually playable.
Yeah, well, he's looking good. He did get hold of that angling rod, of course, and he can start using that this turn. Do you think it's worth the coin? Oh, okay, maybe with a city tax. Is that worth an early one to get rid? Or do you think he needs to just keep playing minions and be okay with sort of staying even on board as opposed to trying to get hold of it?
I think given Nalgadan, I just want to keep playing stuff if I'm him. Like the Angler Rod isn't all too powerful quite yet, and the coin, as I talked about, with these very discrete breakpoints in terms of mana cost, it's too important to hold on to that, in my opinion. Like, say this Libram of Hope goes down to, I don't know, turn 7, he doesn't want to just pass on turn 6, or even if it still costs 8, he doesn't want to pass turn 7 if he doesn't have a powerful play. You want to hit those power plays, and the coin allows you to smooth them out a lot.
Here, though, a little bit of a weak turn here for Simiao. And also a slightly bigger problem is I believe he hasn't cast any spells on friendly minions yet. So as a on-curve play, the Parrot's not looking so cool. But there's a chance he could just play it anyway, honestly. Like, depending on what he draws next, it's better than Hero Power.
I gotta tell you, I'm mainly a Shaman, admittedly, but I'm a tempo Parrot gamer. If you give me a 3-mana 3/3, I'll slam that bad boy down any day of the week.
Did go for trading the city tax first, which I do like. Might give him some more turn 4 options. But didn't really get one. Again, Barov sticking around in hand for Simiao. Working out whether now he wants to hero power or not. He could plan to say hero power this turn, and if he really respects holding on to the parrot, he can then use the 1-drop plus hero power next turn as well to try and just maximize at least some of what's available. Meanwhile, though, Nalgadan picking up the Banana Man is looking pretty good. Still has value trades with this Aldor Attendant.
That's right. And I think for me, the main reason why I like this play from Simiao of going for the Aldor Attendant is actually just because it unlocks Libram of Justice next turn. It's unlikely that it's going to be useful against this board, but I don't know, say they go Coin Carriel, for example, or even Coin Samuro, something of that nature. You can just play it, get a Light's Justice, and kill off 1 minion. It's not terrible. Even here, it's not the most absurd thing in the world to just play out your Libram of Justice, because quite clearly here for Simiao, with the curve of Aldor Truthseeker into Libram of Hope, now he really, really doesn't want to play this Parrot.
Yeah, I think conversations could have been had until that draw happened, right? Like, it is way too good. It might just be enough, because also there is nothing too great in Nalgadan's hand. For now, at least, he does have the Banana Man and the swing of his weapon, so he can draw additional minions. Going to start off with the City Tax, getting another Rod instead.
Still swinging, still getting more minions. Admittedly, I hadn't really considered the benefits of Banana Man plus these Murlocs that you get off the Angling Rod. That is a pretty powerful combo. And we can already see the difference in these two cards, right? Nalgadan is getting immediate payoff from his Angling Rod, whereas Simiao is having to wait 2 or 3 turns before his Parrot actually does anything. But the overall payoff is just so much stronger for Simiao, even if it's a little bit slower in coming into effect.
And although there might be options to clear this, nothing can possibly be as good as Aldor into Aldor, right? Like, surely. Or at least Aldor into the choice of either Libram of Hope or Aldor number 2, especially because it's buffed. I think Nalgadan there just taking his time, right?
Yeah, there's no need to go for the immediate kill on the opposing Aldor Truthseeker. If they had a buff like Libram of Wisdom, they would have played it on that turn, and you can just kill it off with the Rush next turn if absolutely necessary from the Broom, in addition to whatever else you play. Bump, heal, targeting a minion, making sure you're able to get the Sunwing Squawker replayed as well. It's going to be a close one. It's going to be a very back and forth game, as you said, with Varian already, of course, available for Tsai Miao to get that extra value, that extra tempo as well. I really don't know who to put in the lead at this point. This is razor close.
Yeah, even this Libram here from Nalgodan, although obviously good, doesn't look as good because you know there's not a parrot following it up. Oh, this Libram of Wisdom does allow him to get that nice trade onto the Aldor.
Is he going with the Broom?
Okay, Broom to just kill off the 8/8.
Yeah. I was just trying to think if there was any way he could have got repeated value off of the Libram of Wisdom. Like, you could have gone trade the 2/2 and the 2/2, which would of course gone up to a 3/3 and a 3/3, I think, to kill off the Aldor Truthseeker. But that's not necessarily better at all. It's just because you're getting repeat effects. Taking a VT with the Aldor Truthseeker is, I think, probably better overall.
Yep, just retaining more minions on board for more options going forward, especially if there is going to be the parrot, for example, next turn, or if there's going to be just another Libram of Hope. Suddenly there's the Libram of Justice along with the 2 minions, right, to just clean this off pretty easily. Or even just 1 minion into Divine Shield and face tank it. I think face tanking big minions is definitely something you can do in this mirror, as long as you're doing it to retain the board itself, so you're always ahead.
And here it is, isn't it? It's just the lack of reactivity that Paladin suffers from. Here, obviously, Tsai Miao can make very, very powerful plays in the form of repeated Librams of Hope. But Nalgodan gets to dictate the flow of the game with Libram of Justice here to be able to massively lower the overall health on his opponent's board. From there, it's kind of just a cakewalk to clear up the rest.
Yeah, it is looking very, very strong indeed. Just gonna make sure whatever he does is clean. I'm sure with everything he's got available to him, he can make this very clean whilst putting on a load of pressure. But also, is there ever a chance that, for example, like the second Aldor is overcommitting? Is that ever a thing? It does make his Libram cost less, but could he just play the Libram of Justice for 2 mana and be okay with it here?
Could be. You could definitely make that argument. I mean, I would say that... I guess if they have a big clear. I was going to say what I want to do is make it so that they can't play McGurgle Prime or Varian Rin and expect to live the turn because of the amount of pressure you've got. Here, Nalgodan plays around a different eventuality. He's saying, if you have the board clear, then I have a strong follow-up instead. And he does admittedly still get a lot of attack through to face. I think maybe with a slight rope out here. Hopefully he's still got the attack face, even if he didn't get all the buffs through. Okay, just misses 1. Oh, but that 1 he misses is actually quite a big deal, right? In terms of keeping his minions alive. I guess with Varian being an 8/8 instead of a 7/7, it was a clear either way.
Now, what do you like here? Do you think this is I think this is Varian, right? And then next turn it ends up being the McGurgle Prime with the Broom as the most likely response to go wide on board. It's so tricky when both, obviously because this is a mirror, both players do have access to those massive board clears with Barov, with Libram, Samuro, so on. And it's a little bit tricky to decide what's too much, but I think just McGurgle Prime itself, and then a decision on Broom or not based on Nalgadan's board state is looking very, very likely.
And how are we approaching the rest of this? You have the 3/2 Murloc that... Is that the one that gains +1/+1 or deals 2? I think it's the +1/+1.
I think it's the
right?
+1/+1, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's not going to be able to deal extra damage to take this out. In that case, are you going for double buff, brings it up to 7, and then you still can't quite clear it off? Like, you could go double buff City Tax and swing. It feels awful, but if you're going for a Libram of Justice, what do you do when your opponent extends onto the board next turn? You're left in a really disastrous position.
Can he just start with the tradable on the City Tax first? That might solve a lot of problems, right? Can he spare 1 mana?
I think that's reasonable. Like, if you just go trade City Tax, play the Murloc, play Aldor Truthseeker, and buff it up a couple times, you're not going to die next turn. Right. And then you can hopefully clear the board after they overextend.
I mean, you can still clear off super easy, right, with the double buff and just face tank it. If he doesn't want to trade City Tax, sorry.
Yeah.
He just wants to keep it, like, very, very simple. But I just think that what he has available right now just might not be enough. Maybe the swing of the weapon gives him something good here.
This is going Murloc health buff, surely not.
Max Murloc go.
No way. Fishy power.
Okay, here's a question. Was this ever swing first and then Libram? Is that madness?
And what, Libram of...
Justice, sorry. Swing the weapon for the Murloc and then Libram of Justice and then just trade the Divine Shield.
I think I just don't like the Libram of Justice overall on this turn. Like, whether you're going for this line where you're wide with Murlocs or the Aldor Truthseeker line where you just go for 1 big minion in the way, I think you have to save the Libram of Justice. You have to save it for the City Tax next turn. Hope they overextend in a way that's putting them far behind. And from there, you can try and turn things... in a way that leaves them very vulnerable to your board clears. And then from there, you hope to draw Libram of Hope, you hope to draw Varian, whatever else it may be.
Just updating his tracker lens.
Whoa! It looks like he's shifted into some alternate cognitive realm.
We are going to see the McGurgle Prime come down with that Broom, which is going to make tons of trades. Very, very easy indeed.
Is it just a rule of McGurgle Prime that there has to be at least one Sunscale Warrior? Like, every time there has to be one Dormant Minion.
You literally can't play it unless you agree to those terms.
It's just against the law.
Yeah.
And admittedly, Saimiao has chunked all of his Divine Shields into Nalgadan's board. And so if he was hoping for the kind of board that's vulnerable to a big clear in the form of Libram of Justice plus the City Tax, that is exactly what he has gotten, right? This is about as good of a turn as you could hope to get for Nalgadan.
And this is kind of my worry with this, and I understand, like, this is a good clear, right? I'm not even going to question that. It's very strong. But now Nalgadan is just playing off the top of his deck 1 card at a time, and look at how many cards Saimiao has in hand. Yes, he's fallen behind on health, but look at what he's got available. Tons of taunts. He's got Carriel in there. He has a Parrot in hand as well. I'm not quite sure exactly where he's at on the Parrot buff, but in general, he's got so many options here that he can potentially just overwhelm Nalgadan, even though that clear from him was very, very strong.
Bit of a weird missed hero power there for Nalgadan, playing a 2-mana Libram of Justice and then playing the Aldor Truthseeker afterwards, whereas he could have gained 2 extra mana that way. Yeah, exactly. Just a slight misplay, but they can be very relevant, right? 1/1s are actually pretty good in this match. Just to be able to clear off Divine Shields. So hopefully that won't come back to bite him too heavily.
Also, as soon as you draw Liadrin, having any minion that can like live attack is a huge deal, right? Because those Librams start to stack up, and the whole way you sort of deal with the post Liadrin turns is you try and empty the board. So the best the Paladin can do is make a minion or play a minion, stack it, and then hope it lives to attack next turn. Whereas if minions are already living, that can push a ton of damage.
I loved Saimiao as well. Like, I would so have played the Libram of Hope there first, just to be sure. But he's like, no, I remember.
I got this.
Parrot first, then I'm going for the Libram afterwards.
Just to show you all I knew. And then I'd do something like that, and it would just cast something terrible.
It just shoots your minion in the face. Like,
Yeah.
oh, when did I play Fireball on my own minion?
In Paladin.
It's
all going wrong.
Sense. Whoa.
Big pickup. Really big
God,
pickup,
look
that
at that.
Varian.
That's so big,
But-
being able to go double minion plus taunt.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like, yes, it's huge and it's great for Nalgadan, 100%. But he like almost needed to draw exactly Varian or Liadrin out of 11 cards. Like, yes, it's not completely a long shot, but that's where he put himself, right? Where it's just he just was super reliant on a single good card, or he would have fell behind. So Nalgadan is fighting back here, but there are a ton of resources that Saimiao has not used yet. Still has Libram of Justice there. He now has the Barov. He has the Broom. So although this board is impressive, it's long gone if he chooses it to be.
Yeah, it's just insta-wiped here.
I would say the big difference between both players is that Nalgadan still potentially has his Murgurgle Prime, right? Because we can see a Murgurgle on board.
True. Yeah, good point. How are you going about activating this, though? I guess you just go for Barrel of Broom is fine.
Yeah. I think there's no point trying to... Okay. I was going to say, I think there's no point trying to greed things, but... Oh, wait, no, he can do this because he has the Murlocs for Rush. Yeah, this is good, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Gets to
very
keep
cool
Barrow
play.
Broom. Which is, or at least, okay, just keep Barrow for now, of course. He does have to play Broom to give these Rush.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that's how the game works. But still,
That's-
in this sense, he gets to keep Barov at least, which is just solid and still fairly flexible, considering he still does have Rush minions, right? Even Barov Carriol or Barov and the Murloc could be good enough to just punch through one taunt that's in the way.
Needing something big here for Nalgadan. I'm looking for the real big plays, and Samuro is okay again.
Plays the
but
board.
Yeah, it's not really in the top portion of plays that we were looking for. Obviously, Lady Liadrin, Libram of Hope, even Alliance Bannerman, something like that. Just anything to get some real pressure down before his opponent goes with his own very powerful play, as is obviously going to come down on Saimiao.
读心，我快等不及了。
Okay, nothing too crazy. I do think Saimiao would have really liked just a spell, or Liadrin, of course, would be nice at that point, just to really get these Devout Pupils low. But as I said, he can still do this, right? He can still kill off Blade Master. I actually imagine we're going to see Rush number 2 again, because he knows Nalgadan is on 2 Librams and a Dream right now. So if there's just no minions, there's no active attacks that can be made. And
Yeah,
this is getting close to just setting up lethal.
it is. There's one more turn for Nalgadan. If he can get Lady Liadrin right here, maybe he has a chance. Maybe if he can chain that into a Libram of Hope, he still has a chance. But that is not the card he wanted. I think he still has mana if he draws Libram of Hope, but it's really tight. Oh!
Ouch.
So, if he goes double buff here and sticks anything on the board, it's not necessarily lethal, is it? Because, I mean, he's not going to get 9 Librams of Wisdom.
Well,
but
also
he
as well,
can get a bunch.
there's just 2 Devout Pupils, right? Which 2 Divine Shield
True,
taunts on
yeah.
board means that it is unlikely Nalgadan will be able to play Liadrin and punch through 2 Divine Shield taunts. I think that,
So we'll
that
time
ask
out.
might be too big.
Right. And so what Samia needs to do here is just set up lethal on the other side, because Nalgadan, with all the extra Librams that come through from Lady Liadrin, maybe can set up his own counter-lethal, but obviously not if Samia just has too much pressure on the other side.
He's one off, right?
One off lethal this turn? Yeah.
I was trying to work out if there's a weird, like, hit Barov, kill one of your minions somehow to get the Libram, but there just isn't. But I do think these buff devout pupils are a big deal.
And you're just going all in here, right? Like, you just want to make it so they have so few draws that can win them the game. Like, lock out Libram of Hope if you can. Lock out even the craziest McGurgle Prime.
Yeah, and I just think this is nice overall, right? Like, this is so much health on the board, so much attack on the board, and so many spread out minions. That's Barov. But again, the Divine Shields are huge.
Obviously, Libram of Justice is not targeted, so this Barov cannot get synergy in any aspect with that from the Lady Liadrin. I mean, it doesn't even work in that way anyway, but you can't give it Rush. I'm not really seeing anything that can go alongside it here. Trade Liadrin into Hand of Adul, which gets you draw. Libram of Wisdom, or Libram of Hope, sorry, is not going to be cheap enough to play at that point either.
Yeah, I don't think Adul can get him anything right. Like, nothing really makes a difference.
No broom shenanigans.
It looks like to me, Derek, that Samia may have just 3-0'd with Paladin.
I think it's happened, right? The deck that struggled to win a single game, it feels like every time I've cast it, was just looking unstoppable here. I think in this particular game of Hearthstone, as Nalgadan does throw it down, there was that one turn we were talking about towards the mid-game where he didn't go all in on the board, didn't play an extra Aldor, didn't just go for one big to push to close out the game. I do think that was probably a mistake, because it was an instance of, yes, you might lose the game immediately to a big AoE spell, but if you go with this line for Nalgadan, it kind of feels like you're just accepting a slow, grueling defeat anyway, because your opponent is just going to have more pressure. They've just played Varian. You're not going to be able to keep up. Sorry, they're likely to play Varian, so you're not going to be able to keep up. Whereas for Nalgadan, he went for a more hesitant approach, a more cautious approach, and maybe admittedly with slightly better draws he would have been able to get there, but with his slightly more average quality of draw, it was not even close to enough.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because although I think what really stuck out for me was just Samiao's control of resources. That might just be fortunate draws, getting more card draw and so on. But also, for example, in that game, Nalgadan drew Varian almost exactly when he needed him as well. That seemed to be Varian's thing in this series. So he still had resources. It's not like he burnt out. He didn't hit any card draw all game. But even with Varian and all those draws, Samiao still had more resources in hand. And I think that was just what really made the biggest difference overall in that specific game, with just saying, okay, well, you keep playing all this, but every time you're building a board, I can deal with it, or at least keep up, and still have cards, whereas Nalgadan didn't in a lot of the time. So huge victory for Samiao there, and that means his team, Team China, are going to take a point, and that is a much needed point, because in Battlegrounds, before this, the Americas won that stage, which means the Americas gained 2 points, and China gained 0. So now, at least between these two teams right now, it is 2-1, with a chance that China obviously evening this up by winning the next last hero standing best of 5 we've got coming up.
That's right, and it kind of hurts to say that this series really did feel like it came down to a blundered game 2 by Nayara, and it hurts all the more because I think she actually played really well leading up to that final turn where everything just crumbled. It was just that one misstep that cost her the game, and very possibly could have cost them the series as a result, because Samia, of course, then went on to sweep. But next series is a whole new kettle of fish. They get to start again. They can resubmit the bans if they want to. Hey, maybe they don't like this Paladin and just want to get rid of it. Who knows? They can, of course, if they want to. And then it's a fresh best of 5 to figure out who gets the second point after China claimed the first point by winning this series.
Yeah, and I think it's important as well that that matchup really displays the dangers of LHS in how that if you don't like hit with a response deck or with a counter queue, you were often in trouble, right? Even with this many decks, it's kind of difficult to fight back after that. Not only because you obviously lost what you deemed or was your most favorable matchup, but also because then they only need to win one less game, right? Like just it suddenly just goes, okay, well, it was an initial win one, and then the counter queue was lost, which means sign me out. Even if you'd lost the next game, well, the whole team still needs to win one with a choice of one of 5 decks to line up against their opponent, and that is just, it's so much more favorable than what we're used to seeing of a standard best of 5 one ban, which means you don't have a choice of decks to play. You have like one of 3, or at that point, one of 2, maybe one of 1. So huge deal across the board there for China. The only negative for me is we only saw Saimiao play. We didn't get to see any of the Chinese players. So I'm glad we are going to a second series soon after to just follow up with. We'll just check on where that's going. But we do see some highlights overall, so you guys can check that out while the players decide what bans they're going to choose to the second best of 5 here between Team China and Team Americas. But we are going to go to a very quick break before the match begins. So stick around. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone on Global Invitational.